We've been slowly making our way through the book of Genesis, and I highlighted last week, there's really two major sections, and even the video before kind of highlighted that. There's the first 11 chapters, which are stories that often focus on the sin and disobedience of humanity. In fact, we won't get to all those stories, but we're even skipping over yet another, the Tower of Babel. But then in the 12th chapter, there's kind of the beginning of the next section of the book of Genesis. And this is one that starts with this connection between a man named Abram and God. And it'll continue on even into Abram, who will later be known as Abraham, to his descendants. And this is usually called a covenant. This relationship between God and Abram. Our confirmation students, one of them could yell that out. What is a covenant? We always teach them this. What's a covenant? Was even in the video. A promise. I heard it out there. It's a promise. And there's this promise between God and Abram. When you have a promise, if you promise your best friend not to share a secret, you do that because of the relationship you have with them. If you promise a coworker you're going to complete a particular project, it's because you have a relationship with them. If you promise a spouse something, you do that because of your relationship. And I really love the 12th chapter and following because we see this relationship develop between Abram and God, this covenant. And I'm going to read to you from the very beginning of their relationship. And as I read, note some things about their promise, their covenant with each other. So, from Genesis chapter 12, starting at verse 1, "Now the Lord said to Abram, 'Go from your father's country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.' So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot and all the possessions that they had gathered and the persons who they had acquired in Haran, and they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. When they had come to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, 'To your offspring I will give this land,' so that he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on by stages toward the Negeb." So I want to look at this covenant with Abraham, not just to see how the beginning of their relationship unfolds, but more specifically for us. This relationship that God develops with Abram mirrors God's relationship and God's love and God's connection for us. The same elements of the covenant with Abram are part of our covenant, our promise, our relationship with God as well. So one of the things we notice right away is that God is going to lead and guide Abraham. We hear just in verse 1, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house." Right away, God is giving direction and leadership to Abram. And Abram is willing to follow this. Abram picks up all of his stuff. I often wonder, by the way, when you think about this maritally, what that conversation between Abram and Sarai, his wife, must have been like. "Hey, Sarai, guess what? I just talked to God, and we're going to pick up everything we have and all the folks that we have in our community, and we're going to move. I'm sure she had some questions about this. I'm sure this was a little bit challenging. But Abraham's willing to do this, as we had talked about last week with Noah as well. Whenever you enter anything new, there's a certain amount of trust that God's going to have his hand upon that. You know, when you enter a new job or when you move to a new community, when you enter a new relationship, when you start a new ministry or a new service opportunity or attend a new church, you're trusting that God's going to have that unfold the way that God wants. And we have to trust that. And clearly Abram does, even as we need to in the midst of our covenant, our promises with God. And then the text goes on and says that Abram will receive a new land. Very clear. To the land that I will show you. So he sends him off to Canaan. Now the text describes that there were already people living there, and as the story of God's people unfolds, that land will become theirs. But he's saying, I will take care of you. I will look out for you. Now I'd love to be able to say, as God said to Abram, that means that you'll get your own place, your own land. I'm not sure that that's the promise that God always gives us, but that we will have a territory, we will have an area, we will have some ways that we can make an influence. I don't know if you remember, there was a real popular little book some years back called The Prayer of Jabez. Just a tiny little prayer. I think it's First Chronicles. And the book was fairly popular. It was a little bit formulaic in its thinking about the prayer. But one of the things I liked in that prayer, and the book expounded upon, is the idea of expanding your territory. You know, that you can make an influence and you can make a difference in the world around you. God is saying to Abram, and God says to us, we can make a difference in the world around us. We can expand the little land, metaphorically or not, that we have to make a difference for the world. And that continues to unfold. And not only a new land, but a great nation. In verse 2 yet, it says, I will make of you a great nation. Now remember, Abram at this point has no children. He has no family except for his nephew Lot. So it's a little bit confusing about how that is going to unfold. But in later repeatings of this promise, this idea is expanded. It even goes on to say that in this metaphor, which I'll tell you about by telling you that one time I was playing Pictionary with my in-laws, my wife and I and my father-in-law, who was a Lutheran pastor as well. But it was Bible Pictionary. This is what two pastors and their wives do. You play Bible Pictionary. I have to highlight, by the way, me and my wife kicked their butts. But I still remember one of the little pictures that either my mother-in-law or my father-in-law drew. I had a stick figure, and there were lots of dots in the sky and lots of dots on a beach, and the other one guessed Abraham. Because the promise to Abraham is that as numerous as the stars are in the sky or the grains of sand on the beach, this is how multitude your family will be. That will come to unfold. In fact, I keep switching back and forth between the names. Abram means great father, but Abraham means father of many or father of multitude. That's why that name changes. So they will be a great nation. And again, this idea that any of us, maybe you've heard the idea of a sphere of influence, that all of us have some people around us that we can make a difference with, that Abraham, will make a difference is important, and in our relationship with God as well. God even goes on to say, not just a new land, not just a great nation, but I will bless you, that you will have a great name. It says, I will bless you and make your name great. And I often think in the fact that we still talk about Abram, that we still talk about Abraham, that we would sing a song that I learned as a kid and the kids learn today, that his name is great, that he would be blessed, and that we will be blessed as well. I was just having a conversation with a guy the other day in the men's Bible study on Saturdays, yesterday morning. The group's been encouraged to find a word that will kind of follow them and kind of lead them in the next little while, maybe over the next year. And I was talking to a guy, and he said, the word I chose is gratitude. Gratitude. You know, that any of us have our challenges and our difficulties, and he does as well. But he said, I'm so grateful for all of the things that God is doing in my life, that we are blessed. And any of us can focus on the things that are frustrating or difficult, or we can look at the many, many ways that we're blessed. God says that, and Abram realizes that he is blessed by God. But not just that. The fifth part of the covenant, the relationship, is that he will be a blessing. The end of verse 2 says, so that you will be a blessing. That we are blessed to be a blessing. And we clearly see this with Abram, in the fact that he will continue to have a family. That family will be the children of God, the nation of Israel, that people will see God's power through them, that they will be a blessing. And we as well are meant to be a blessing. We're not blessed just to absorb it and keep it and do our own thing and enjoy it. We're meant to be a blessing to others. Any one of us can be kind to the world, to the people around us, and make their life a little bit more joyful. Any one of us can be generous with our time, generous with our energy, generous with our talents, generous with our finances. We're blessed to be a blessing. Any one of us can look for ways to serve and to reach out to others. I continue to enjoy, and you've seen them as well, all these different ministries we have here at St. Paul's and all the different folks that are involved in numerous ways to be a blessing to this world around us. I was reminded of this just yesterday. I went out for a bike ride, and as you know, it's been a little bit hot, and I took a little pause by the side of the road just to cool down and rest for a little bit, and a truck driver pulled up along and just kind of gave me a look and like a thumbs up, and I gave him a thumbs up. He even stuck his head out the window and said, "Do you need any water?" I said, "No, I'm good." Somebody taught him that he's not just blessed, but that he's meant to be a blessing. And all of us are meant for that as well. I would encourage you to take home the bulletin with this little text. It's just 2 verses, the beginning of this covenant between God and Abram, and reflect on it a little bit for all of the things about our relationship, our covenant with God as well. So I mentioned that how is Abram going to start a nation when he is childless? But next week we'll go on and look at that story. Amen.